Hello, I am Mac, at least for a day, and everything's going to be okay. This is going to be my review of Loch Henry, an episode of Black Mirror season 6. Now, Loch Henry, in my opinion, is a very good episode. It's has so many cool twists and turns, and it doesn't have a lot to say about society. Well, forgot to give my spoiler warning. I'm going to be going through the entire plot of Loch Henry and giving commentary and analyzing the themes of the entire plot. So if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this. Um, but yeah, it's a very, very good episode. There's just one little part that kind of ruins it for me, and we'll talk about that. But it like I said, it doesn't say a whole lot about society. My way of judging if a Black Mirror episode is good or not is um if it says something really significant about society and technology. Sometimes if it's sci-fi, this episode isn't really sci-fi. It's not supernatural either. It's just well, we'll get into it, but and I'll be analyzing a lot more as we go along. But anyway, Loch Henry is about two film students, Davis and his girlfriend Pia. Well, I think they're out of college. They don't really make it clear if they're graduated or not. They don't make it sound like they're still in college. So I guess they were in university or college or whichever, and maybe they're not now. And um, now they're planning on like making their first film that they're going to try to make into a success somehow. But at the beginning, they are just driving out to Davis's home. So it's out in a very rural part of, I'm pretty sure, the UK. Um, it's like very scenic, very beautiful. There's rivers and mountains and forest. And so they drive out to a little house out almost in the middle of nowhere, and they get out, and so there's Davis and his girlfriend Pia, and they go up. His mom comes out, and they're in their 20s, and the mom is like probably in her early 60s, or is supposed to be. um and Davis introduces Pia. His mom has never met her before. um and her mom says, oh, she's really pretty and stuff. And it come Pia talks, and she can tell her accent isn't British, and so she's actually an American. And they talk about that, and then they go in and looking around inside his house, and Pia sees a picture of Davis's dad, and he's in police uniform. And then later that evening, they're eating dinner with the mom, and they're trying to tell her about the film they're trying to make. So they're basically making a film about a guy who watches eggs, and he basically tries to protect the eggs from being poached, from people stealing the eggs and like cooking them or whatever. Um, and like the mom doesn't really understand, why is that a good film, because it honestly doesn't sound that interesting of a film. And Pia tries to defend Davis. She's like, he's like a vigilante because the police won't do anything about it. Like, poaching the eggs is a crime, but the police won't do anything about it because they don't care. And the mom says, well, I'm sure they're just stretched thin. Your father knew about that. And then so Pia gets really embarrassed, and then that night she's talking to Davis, and she's like, oh my gosh, I saw the picture of your dad in uniform. And then I start bad mouthing the cops 20 minutes later. um and then the next morning, well, they find a really old camcorder from like the 80s, which will be important later. And then later the next morning, they're waiting for, well, they're just in the living room. before they head out or before they eat breakfast or something. And uh Pia's looking around again and she sees there's a whole bunch of VHS tapes that say Bergerac on them. And so Bergerac is supposedly an old British detective show from like the 80s. I don't know if it's real, probably not, it's probably fictional. And Davis says, yeah, my mom had a real crush on him because she said he had a nice bum. And Pia's like, the last thing I want to think about is your mom thinking about some guy's butt. And the mom walks in and she said, well, he did have a nice one. And then Pia gets really embarrassed again. She's like, just kill me now after the mom's gone. Um, and so they leave and to go out to look at the sights, and it's so beautiful. And one really funny joke is Pia says that they're out like on the edge of the river looking at the mountains, and Pia says, wow, it's like something from a painting. And Davis says, yeah, because people paint landscapes. I love that joke. Um, and then Pia says, but where is everybody? This place is so beautiful. Why isn't there tourists? And Davis doesn't really answer. And then they go into the small town, and like everywhere's closed. Like everywhere has a sign saying it's for, well, it says to let, which I believe means for lease. Here in America, we say for rent or for lease, but I guess to let is how they say it in the UK. So almost everything is closed, and then they come to a pub that's open, and they go in, and the guy manning the bar, do they call it a bar in the UK? They call the whole thing a pub, but maybe the actual bar is still called a bar. I don't know. But anyway, the guy at the bar, he's like, Davis, and whatever his last name is, I told you to never set foot in this pub again. He walks up to him. He's like, get out right now. And Davis says, hi, Stuart. And Stuart laughs because Stuart's like my favorite character in the episode because he's so funny, and he's a crude kind of, I guess, rural British guy. He's got a really thick accent, and he's always making jokes, and he's really crude and always cursing, but he's so fun loving and lovable. And he's my favorite character. He's the best in this episode. So anyways, they're laughing, and they sit down, and they're talking, and Stuart's father walks in and like gets him help a drink at the pub, and like Stuart's like bad mouthing him quietly, saying, well, there's my my useless father who just comes down once a day and then stays in his room all day, and then he leaves. And Davis is like, well, is he depressed? And Stewart's like, of course he's depressed. Like, we're the only pub left in town, and there's nobody ever here, and the town is dying. Um, and Pia's like, yeah, but why? Why? It's such a beautiful area. Why does nobody ever come here? And Stewart says, well, it's because of Ian Adair, of course. And Pia's like, who's Ian Adair? So then they tell the whole story. Um, Davis tells the story, and Stewart keeps interrupting and ruining the story, but Davis tells the story of how there used to be lots of tourists in the area, but one time a married couple that was like honeymooning there suddenly disappeared, and all their stuff was left in their hotel. No one could figure out what happened to them. And of course, the police were called out, including Davis's father, who was a policeman. And I forgot to mention, they established that his father is dead. But yeah, so Davis's father was involved, and so they were looking for Ian Adair. Sorry, they didn't know who it was at this point. They were looking for the married couple. I kind of ruined it there, but Stewart had already ruined it. He already said, because Ian Adair was a serial killer and stuff like that. But so yeah, they were looking for the married couple. They couldn't find anything. The case kind of went cold, and then they said, and then Princess Diana died, and the press moved on and didn't cover the story anymore. And then a while later, a guy named Ian Adair was at the pub, and he drank in a whole lot, and he was drunk, and his mouth got loose, and Stuart's father, who was younger then and was running the pub and everything, he like started to Ian Adair started saying all kinds of crazy stuff, including like he wanted to kill the police or he was mad at the police for some reason. And um uh uh Stewart's father kicked him out of the pub, but he was worried because he knew Ian had a shotgun and he's worried because he was saying that he wanted to kill the police. Um uh that he might do something dangerous. So Davis's father, the policeman, goes out to the farm where Ian and his parents lived, and and he like knocked on the door and there was no answer. And then as he was leaving, um Ian Adair shot at him through the window and didn't kill him but wounded his shoulder. And then backup came and they found out that Ian had killed his mom and dad and then killed himself with the shotgun. And then Davis's father went to the hospital and he recovered from his gunshot wound, but then he got like a bacterial infection in the hospital that was incurable. And so he was sick for a long, long time. And then he finally died. So he was indirectly killed by Ian. Like, if Ian hadn't shot him, it wouldn't have led to him getting the sickness and then eventually dying. So Pia's like, wow, so your father was kind of a victim of him too. So anyway, they I skipped ahead a little bit, but right after they found out Ian had killed himself and his parents, they found a torture dungeon, torture and sex dungeon, in his cellar, or in the cellar of the shed or something. Basically a secret underground dungeon. And they found, like all the DNA evidence that the couple had been there. And I shouldn't say DNA evidence because I don't know if they really used DNA evidence, but they found all the, torture implements and stuff. And then they searched in his backyard and all the bodies were buried. So, and it wasn't just the two honeymooners, it was a total of 8 people. And Pia was like, how come they didn't notice all the other people that died? And they're like, well, this area, we have a river and it's a real nice hiking area. And sometimes hikers get lost and fall and die, or they fall in the river and drown. So, people figured it was just, people disappearing while out in the area, but it was actually people being killed by Ian Adair. So then Pia's like, can we go see where he lived? And Davis is like, yeah, I guess. And so they do, and they see like the shed that has the dungeon in the basement and stuff. And Pia's like, this is the film that we should be making. Let's forget that stupid egg film idea. And Davis is like, I thought you liked the egg idea. And she was like, no, I really didn't. We should do this. And Davis is like, no way, this will dig up all the old stuff and my mom won't like it, and because she's really hurt by the death of my father and so on and so forth. And he refuses at first, and then she keeps kind of pressuring him, and then eventually they go back to the pub where Stewart is. And Stewart is all for it. Stewart is like, yes, if you do make this film, then it'll bring all the people back. And he talks about how, and this is like the important theme of the story, he talks about how, people kind of idolize serial killers that are in streaming service. And he actually says Netflix. He talks about like a Netflix series that had a serial killer. And this is a really topical thing because, and it's funny that a Netflix show is making this point, but a lot of people have gotten upset about serial killer documentaries on Netflix and other places, because they seem to kind of glorify the serial killer and everything. Like I recently watched the Jeffrey Dahmer story and I enjoyed it, but I know a lot of people got really upset that it kind of made him not really a hero, but a supervillain, like seem really cool, even though he did really horrible things. Sort of, it like the whole focus was on him, and so it was. They tried to like make a big point of all of his victims and stuff, but it still kind of humanized him and kind of made him out to be kind of good, relatable, but also, a horrible serial killer. I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of one of the main underlying themes of this. But so anyway, since Stewart's all for it, and Stewart has a box of VHS tapes that his mom made. She recorded um all of the news reports of when the couple went missing, and then when they discovered Ian Adair and so on. So they have all that footage they can use for their film, and then they can also interview Stewart and other people. There's not a whole lot of people in the town but left, but they can interview other people and film things like, and Stewart's like, yeah, we got to use my drone to get lots of shots of how beautiful it is here, because he says, when there's a serial killer documentary and it shows the area being like really pretty and stuff, and also people just want to come and see where the serial killer was and everything, like apparently the serial killer chased everyone away, but now if you do a streaming documentary on it, it's going to make everybody want to come there for some reason. So they really want to, Stewart's really for it, and so Davis gives in. So they decide to start filming it, and there's a montage where they start making the drone footage, and then they are interviewing Stewart. So they set up their camera equipment and they're interviewing Stewart about it. And Stewart's father comes down the stairs and he overhears it, and he like falls down the stairs. And so Stewart comes over and to see what's wrong, and like the father gets really mad and is saying that they shouldn't be digging up old stuff like this and things. And then you start to suspect him, because it's like, why doesn't the father want them to do a story about this? Like, was he involved somehow? And it like keeps implying that. So anyway, later, Pia and Davis are looking at the footage and editing it some in his bedroom at his mom's house. And his mom comes in and she sees that they're interviewing Stewart, and she's like, are you not doing the egg documentary anymore? And Davis is honest. He says, yeah, we decided to do it about, everything that happened, Ian Adair. And her mom was like, so are you going to tell them what happened to your father? And he's like, and Davis is like, only if you want us to. And she's like, yes, I want you to. Like, the world needs to know what that horrible man did. He ruined everything. That stupid man. If he were still alive, I would wring his neck. And so it's a really cool part, because the mom seemed like really prudish, and like she was nice, but it also at the same time, was kind of uncomfortable, like, hard to explain, but she seemed like kind of a person that wouldn't really uptight kind of woman, but she's like all for it. And so they decide to interview her as well. So they do a part where they start to interview her. They set up the cameras in her room and in her living room or whatever, and interview her. So that's like a really neat part, like, yay, the mom's getting involved and everything, and it seems so nice and all that. And then Pia and Davis go to a like publisher that publishes these documentaries, so they can try to get it onto like a streaming service or something. And so they're pitching it to the lady, and she's like, it's another serial killer, but it's not really as well known as these other serial killers. Like, do you have an angle to make it more interesting? And Pia mentions, well, his father was one of the victims. And she's like, oh, I guess we could kind of maybe go for the personal angle. And she's like, let me talk to them about it and we'll see what we can do. And she says, but could you get any new footage, like of the actual torture dungeon? And Pia's like, yeah, totally. And Davis is like, yeah, totally. Because earlier, like, it was all boarded up, and Davis was like, no, we can't go in there. But of course, they're not going to say that, because they really want to get the film published and everything. So the three of them, Davis, Pia, and Stewart, go, and they're breaking into the shed that has the dungeon in the basement. And funny part is Stuart is using the crowbar to take the wooden planks off the window or door or whatever. And Davis is like, "Can you be a little quieter?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll put the crowbar on silence mode." So they go in, and for some reason, and this is kind of a plot contrivance, but they decide to film this part with the old VHS camera because they want it to be like VHS style. They didn't explain it very well, but a better explanation would be we want to make it look like it's old footage. Like we want to make it look like this is footage from when the investigation is, because like the investigation didn't actually show. I mean, it showed like the torture room, but they wanted to use a black light because they didn't really use black lights back then. They wanted to try and use a black light and see like all the stains and stuff that they could find. But for whatever reason, but it's a plot contrivance because it leads to something else. So all those Bergerac tapes, Davis stole one of the Bergerac tapes because like where else are they going to get a VHS this day and age? So they use the VHS tape in the camcorder, and Pia's like, "Is your mom going to mind that you're going to tape over Bergerac?" And he's like, "Oh, she won't notice," or something. And so they go down to the dungeon and they turn on the black light, and it's so gross because there's splatters all across the wall and splatters all over the floor where all kinds of different fluids were. And they film that, and it's so gross. And then on the way back, they're driving in a truck, and they're all laughing and making jokes and stuff. And then suddenly they run. I don't know how this happens. It's kind of crazy, but they ran headfirst into a tractor, and it turns out it was the tractor of Stewart. I guess it was a tractor. It happens so fast you don't really see what the other vehicle is. Which I don't know why Stewart's father would have a tractor if he owns a pub, but maybe it was a car. But anyway, they run head first, and it turns out to be Stewart's father. Thankfully, no one is seriously injured, but again, you kind of suspect, like, is Stewart's father trying to stop them from doing this film? And so they're in the hospital, and Pia's perfectly fine. She doesn't have any injuries for some reason. She was in the middle. I don't know. I guess she was kind of shielded by the two guys in the crash, but nobody's really seriously injured. But Davis has a concussion and a neck brace, and Stewart has like a hand injury. And then his father was also pretty badly injured, but not like super seriously. But so Stewart and the father are going to stay in the hospital, and you can kind of see where this is going. And Stewart's going to go home, and Pia's going to go back to Davis's mom's house to work on the footage and all that. But Davis has to stay because he has a concussion, and Stewart's father stays. So where this is kind of leading is like it seems like Stewart, you're starting to Stewart's father, you're suspecting that he was actually in on the murders, and so now this is like his chance to kill Davis to stop him from doing the film. That's what you're thinking. And Pia goes home, and Pia puts in the videotape that they taped the dungeon with, and she's converting it into digital. So she puts in this VCR, and it's like converting into digital on her laptop. And so the two scenes are switching back and forth. So Stewart's father, he's like has a crutch or something. He's like hobbling towards where Davis is, and you're like, oh no, he's the real killer, and he's gonna bash in Davis's head or something. And Pia is just digitizing the footage that they have, and then Davis or Stewart's father gets to Davis's bed, and Davis is like, whoa, what's up? Why are you coming into my room? And Davis's father sits down, and then you're like, oh good, he's not the killer. And Stewart's father says, so I need to tell you something. I've always suspected this, but I think I really need to tell you. And then it cuts to Pia. She's not paying attention. The VHS is done digitizing the part about the dungeon, and then it switches to Bergerac. So of course they copied over Bergerac, and then the Bergerac, the detective show from the 80s ends, and it changes to some other footage. And she looks at it, and it's somebody filming Ian Adair. So somebody is with Ian Adair filming, and then that guy hands they're in the dungeon, and he hands the camcorder to Ian Adair, and then it shows Davis's father, and he's even got his not the coat, but he's got a police like white shirt with arm things, whatever they're called. Like you can tell he's a police, and like you can tell it's his father. And Pia's like, what? His father was involved with this? And it shows the two married couple, the honeymooners, tied up on a couch, and then Davis's father is like, you guys are going to get a special treat because the mistress is coming down. And Davis's mother, looking a lot younger, comes down. She puts on this red mask, and she has um a power tool drill thing, and she like dances over. They put on raunchy music, and she dances over to the married couple, and they're like screaming through their gags, and she turns on the power tool, and they're like screaming, and it cuts away from it, and like Pia's like got this horrified face on her face, and Davis's mother comes on. She quickly shuts the laptop so the mother doesn't see what she's watching. The mother's like, it's time to eat, the food's ready, I've made shepherd's pie. And so Pia is like secretly freaking out, but if she had stayed calm, everything would be fine, because the mom had no idea. But she couldn't stay calm. She tried eating dinner with her, and she saw the red mask on the wall. Like, it was actually shown in the episode earlier, but we wouldn't have known what it meant. But she saw the red mask on the wall, and Pia was kind of staring at it in fear. And the mother said, oh, my husband gave me that, we used to have such fun. um and Pia's like really freaking out, and she's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And she goes to the bathroom, and she tries to call somebody on the phone, but there's no cell service out there. So then she goes downstairs, and the mother's like, what's going on? Is something wrong? And she's like, I need to go for a walk. I need some fresh air. So she leaves, and the mom starts to get suspicious. And so she goes upstairs, and suddenly the VCR stops, and the Bergerac tape ejects out of the VCR. And then the mother realizes it, because she left footage at the end of those videos, which is kind of a crazy plot point. It's like she seriously left footage of murders that she took part in on VHS tapes in her living room, as if no one was ever going to notice them. Like, how did Davis never stumble upon them before? Like, I guess he wasn't interested in watching the detective show, and she made sure he never watched to the end of the videos. But anyway, so the mom figures out that Pia knows what she did now. So the mom gets in her car and drives out, and Pia is in the road, still trying to get her phone to work. And the mom's like, what's the matter, dear? Just get in the car, everything's fine. And Pia's like, no. And the mom's like, get in the car. And so Pia runs through the field, and the mom gets out, and like she can't follow her through the grass with her car. But the mom like doesn't even leave the road. It's kind of dumb. Like Pia hides, and the mom can't find her, but the mom doesn't even try leaving the road. Like, apparently she's not desperate enough to really leave the road. And so Pia runs off, and then this is the bad part that ruins it for me, is just how dumb this part is so Pia's running as fast as she can, trying to get away, because she thinks the mom's following her, but she's not. She's just staying on the road, cursing at her. And she goes across the river, and Pia just slips and falls, hits her head, and goes under the water and drowns. Like, I mean, you can tell she probably drowned, and later they confirm that she died. And that's the stupid part. It's like why did they have to kill Pia? There was no reason for Pia to die. Like, the mom didn't kill her. Like, it would have been more narratively make sense if the mom had killed her, but Pia just slips and falls and drowns. It's so stupid. What a stupid way to die. And really the way she falls, it's like if you really slipped on rocks, the first thing you do is put your hands up to prevent your head from getting hit. But she just like falls over like not even protecting her head and like bashes her head and gets knocked out and drowns. It's such a stupid death, and there's no reason that happened. Like Pia could have just run away and survived, and the same thing that's about to happen would have happened. Like, why did they have to kill Pia off like that? Like, if the mom had killed her, it would have played a narrative point. But if there was no reason for Pia to just accidentally slip and fall and die. I mean, I know they established earlier that that happens, like people fall in the river and die, but there was no reason to kill off Pia that way. It was so stupid. So anyway, the mom gives up and she realizes that she's doomed because she thinks Pia got away alive. She doesn't know that she's dead. So the mom goes home and she knows the game's up. She knows that Pia's going to tell people and they're going to investigate and figure out that she was a part of the serial killing. Her and her husband and Ian were apparently a serial killing trio. So the mom like gets all the VHS tapes out, which apparently all have footage on them. It's crazy that no one ever found it. Puts them on the table. She like goes through her drawers, and this part's kind of funny in a really morbid way because she gets out these photographs, and they're like photographs of the people they murdered, like tied up, and like them posing with the people and like posing with the power tools and the mom is like, she's got tears in her eyes and she's smiling. She's like, oh, those were the days when my husband and I and another man brutally tortured and murdered people. She doesn't say that, but it's like it's a goofy thing because she's smiling like any older person would when they're looking at cherished memories while looking through these horrible photographs of people that they're killing and stuff. And so she puts the photographs on the table along with the VHS tapes, and she writes a note, and you don't see what the note is. And then she gets out some rope and she hangs herself. And then we cut forward to it becomes a trailer for the documentary. So the documentary is like he thought he was just making a documentary, but it was too close to home. And it kind of shows footage that we've all seen, like of the interviews, including the mom's interview, and then footage from the VHS tapes and the pictures. And so basically everything's been figured out. Everyone knows now, and it's in the film that Ian Adair didn't act alone. It was actually a police officer and his wife that also participated in the killing and everything, torture and sexual stuff. And then it's at like these streaming awards and like I mean Stewart so like Stewart's at the pub and it's like full of people, so just like he wanted, since the film got made, the pub is full. It's kind of a happy ending for Stewart because he got what he wanted, and they're watching the TV and Stewart's like, shh, this is the part, and they announce that Loch Henry, the name of the documentary and also the name of this episode, wins the streaming award. And so the publisher that they had been meeting with earlier accepts the award, but then she said she wants to dedicate it to Davis and his girlfriend, his late girlfriend Pia. So that's when we get confirmation that Pia actually did die. And we'll go over more. I'll rant some more about how bad Pia's death was. But so Stewart accepts the award, and you can tell he's not very happy, obviously. I mean, it would kind of look bad if he looked happy because everybody knows what horrible things happened and that, yeah. Anyway, so the streaming awards are ending and there's like a party afterwards, and the publisher lady is like, she's horrible. She's like saying horrible things about this other person who made a documentary, and then when they come over, she like acts all nice. She's like super fake and everything. And she actually says to the lady, like, we're making a drama series about the documentary and we're looking for someone to play Pia. Could you maybe play Pia? And she's like, that's an idea. But anyway, Davis leaves, he sneaks away because he doesn't want to be there anymore. And so he goes up to his hotel room, and he's just sitting there looking really sad, and the phone rings, and Stuart's on the phone, and Stuart's like, yeah, we did it, this is wonderful, like there's so many tourists now, blah blah blah. And Davis just hangs up on him, and gets out a piece of paper in his pocket, and he unfolds it, and it's the note that his mom left for him that says, "For your film, Mom." um and so he just breaks down and starts crying, and that's the end of the episode. It's like, it's such a tragic end. I'm not saying the ending is bad. The ending is very emotional, and like I can relate to it a little bit. Like, obviously I don't know what it's like to find out that both of your parents were serial killers, but I know what it's like to lose loved ones that we'll leave it at that. I know what it's like to lose loved ones, and but it's just so dumb they killed off Pia. Like, there was no reason to. If Pia had escaped and lived, the mom would have still done the same thing that she did. And then, well, maybe Pia and Davis would have broke up because Pia's kind of responsible for the mom's death. But they didn't need to kill her off like that. Like, even if it was going to be over between her and Davis, like, there was no reason for her to die. Like I said, the way she died was just so stupid, just slipping and falling, hitting at her rock, hit on a rock, and drowning. It's like, why do that? They just wanted to make it more tragic. Because I guess, the ending wouldn't have been as tragic if Pia had been with Davis. Like, it would be sad that he lost his mom, but at least he would have Pia, unless, like I said, they broke up because Davis would have been mad at Pia for kind of causing his mom's death, but it's really his mom's fault. But okay, let's put aside the one part that I don't like. That's the only part that I dislike. Everything else is great. So it's an awesome episode for the twists. It's awesome because, like, they kind of show how gaudy the streaming stuff is, especially when you're taking advantage of horrible incidents where lots of people killed in order to make a dramatic documentary about a serial killer or whatever. It's very exploitative. And I mean, obviously what happened in this story is very unusual. It's not the kind of thing that actually happens. You don't usually discover the real killer um in the making of a documentary, but I do like the idea of, like, it's bad to dredge up these old things, because a lot of these documentaries are of killers that were around in the 80s as well. And it's like you're dredging up all this really old stuff just to get streaming views and everything. But that's what our society is like. People like watching a spectacle of, horrible things that happened and everything. And but yeah, I mean, it was a very entertaining episode. I love the twist, but I mean, it's kind of sad. The reason I like it is because, it's a really dramatic, horrible thing. Um, but I mean, it's fictional. But yeah, very, very good. A very good social commentary about the messed up entertainment that we watch. And the streaming service that they did it was the streaming service they had the documentary on wasn't Netflix. It's called Streamberry. It's a parody version of Netflix. It's pretty funny to me that Netflix let them use something that's like a blatant parody of them, because, like, Streamberry, you know how Netflix has the N and it comes at you, and that's like their logo intro thing. The S in Streamberry does that too. The S comes at you and it makes the exact same sound effect as the Netflix sound effect. Streamberry is also featured in the last episode that I'll be doing that I haven't done yet. But yeah, pretty funny that Netflix allowed them to basically satirize them, make a satire out of Netflix, and, like, expose some of the bad things about it. Like, I mean, Black Mirror is a Netflix series, so it's like, I guess they're okay with being satirized. But anyway, yeah, really, really good episode. Great acting from all of the actors in it. I really liked I liked all the characters. I mean, obviously the mom turns out to be a villain. She did horrible things. She participated in the torture and killing of people. Um, but at the same time, I mean, she was such a likable character before you find that out, and the way she acts after is kind of, well, I won't I won't try to judge that, but it's so sad that she leaves that note because she still cared about her son. The really unrealistic thing is that other than the whole VHS tapes were out in her living room all that time, but how in the world did such a horrible person, a person that would participate in torture and killing people, how did she raise a son well? How did she raise such a good son? I mean, obviously Davis isn't perfect and he's kind of timid and shy, and but I don't think his mom was abusive or anything. So it's very strange. So basically she just hid that part of herself for 20 years, um and just kind of hid that away, and so that she could be a good mom and like not raise a horrible son by doing anything that she shouldn't have to her son. It's kind of bizarre, but it's kind of realistic because a lot of people are like that. Like people will have secrets, pretty much everyone. Everyone has secrets that they hide, and secrets that if other people knew it, they would think they were horrible people. It's like sometimes married couples will live together their whole lives and there'll be something that they didn't know about the other person. Like they've always hid it, like something horrible they did in their childhood or something, and um they just, never told because they didn't want their partner or other people to think lesser of them. So it's really kind of realistic. It seems impossible but there's even a case where if you watch the YouTube channel JCS Criminal Psychology, he covers this one case where there was this woman that like 20 years ago, or wait, the 80s would have been 40 years ago. Why did they say it was 20 years ago? Maybe it was like the 90s actually. Anyway, so there was this woman that like murdered another woman in the 80s, and all these years later they finally found evidence, like DNA evidence. They were able to analyze DNA evidence and figure out that it was her, and like she had been like a police officer, detective, etc. all this time. Like she was a police when she committed the murder, and then she stayed in the police force and was like a detective, and like so all these decades later they called her in for questioning and they caught her. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy case. So that kind of thing does happen. Like someone can commit murder and then live their whole life hiding it and acting like a model citizen, being a successful police officer, detective, um and have this one really horrible secret. And yeah, so pretty incredible. But anyway, so I would give Loch Henry an 8 out of 10. I'd like to give it a 9 out of 10. Um, it would be 9 out of 10 because of horse Pia dying. That part is really dumb. But also I mean, it's not sci-fi, which I guess I shouldn't take away points for that. Um, let's give it a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Almost perfect, but because of Pia's death, it ruins it for me. So anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed Loch Henry, Black Mirror season 6, and I highly recommend people to watch it. It's a very good episode, very well made, very good story, very good acting, very fun characters, pretty good themes on society and all that. So anyway, I have been Mac. I will be making the last episode that I haven't done of season 6 tomorrow, and then that'll be it. I'll be done with reviewing season 6 of Black Mirror. So anyway, I've been Mac. Thank you for joining me for a day, and remember, everything's going to be okay.